Tomorrow, the first 3 episodes of the latest Star Wars live-action series Andor drops on Disney+. I've actually watched the first 4 episodes of the show, so let's talk about it. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comments section. Share your excitement level for Andor specifically and your feelings on where Star Wars is at in general. As we go into this is a spoiler-free review, so I won't be going into any specifics as I kind of give my general feelings on the first 4 episodes of the show. To give you a little bit of background on where I'm at with Star Wars, I'm a lifelong Star Wars fan. 10 years ago when they announced that Disney was acquiring Lucasfilm, I was so excited for more Star Wars, and that excitement has dramatically dropped over the last several years, where most of the movies have not really been as good as they should have been. And while I was a huge fan of The Mandalorian, I thought Book of Boba Fett was a mess, and then Obi-Wan was a big disappointment. It has its moments, but in general, I thought Obi-Wan should have been so much better than it was. And so I'm going into Andor kind of a little bit burned by Star Wars over the last several years, and kind of thinking, why on earth are we doing a show about Cassian Andor of all people? With all that said, let's get started with the good. And let's just get right to it. As someone that has not been crazy about Star Wars' recent output, I really dug Andor, and it was kind of everything that I hoped that it could be. So essentially, this show is being created by the guy that wrote and directed the reshoots for Rogue One. So it continues in that sort of tone and vibe of being essentially this spy thriller set in the world of Star Wars that's not meant to be about wizards with laser swords. It's supposed to be about much more the ground level of what was it like to live during the Imperial rule and the rise of the Empire. And our lead character is Andor, but he's more the vehicle to explore the world of Star Wars at this point in time. In the opening scene for the series, something happens that sets everything else in motion for the series, but the way it's done is to make it clear that just everyone has this rich backstory. They don't feel like a cardboard cutout. They don't feel like a stereotype. They're a person that has a history that's led them to this moment in time in the story. And one of the things that classic Star Wars was known for was kind of having this lived-in world where everything had a backstory and a history. It was so rich, and that was the brilliance of George Lucas. And that's, again, what this kind of feels like, where you have this person that's doing things, and immediately you go, oh, I wonder what happened to this person. I wonder why they're there. I wonder what exactly this means. Because everything feels like it's multi-layered, it's complex, it has a history, that's really what elevates this. Like so much of Book of Boba Fett, Obi-Wan, even Mandalorian, which I loved, have kind of these very simplistic stories where you kind of go in and a conflict is set up and immediately resolved by the end of the episode. No kind of like setup, payoff. It just kind of a scenario is introduced and it's resolved by the end of the episode. And you run into some characters along the way, but they're just kind of come and go. They feel like random characters that show up in a show, not like people with a history. And Andor is the opposite of all of that. So much of what has frustrated me about these recent Star Wars TV shows with the simplistic, absolute basic level writing is resolved in Andor, where you're put in a situation and there's multiple layers to it, multiple different moving pieces, and you're trying to figure out how it's all gonna tie together, but all along the way, you're just feeling the tension winding and winding and winding, and you know it's gonna snap eventually as the pieces move closer and closer together. You know it's gonna go bad, but you don't know when it's going to explode. In particular, the first 3 episodes, the ones that are dropping tomorrow, they play as a single story broken up into 3 pieces, but essentially it's a 90-minute pilot movie putting everything in motion. And the first episode introduces a conflict. The second episode just raises the stakes and the tension, and then in the third episode, everything kind of explodes. And that's the other thing I loved about this show, is that this is probably the most mature Star Wars movie or TV show that we've ever gotten. It's designed for an older audience. It's not appealing to the lowest common denominator. The creator openly stated that their mandate was to do no fan service. They're not going to do a bunch of member berries and be like, hey, look who it is. Did you see what that was? They're not doing that. They're trying to tell a complex story about what the world was like at the start of the rebellion and tell this espionage thriller in the world of Star Wars. So it feels different. It's not trying to fix Star Wars. It's not rewriting Star Wars. It's just telling an in-depth story in one window that is designed for kind of a little bit of an older audience than normal. And I mean that in the best way possible. Another nice little touch with the show is that it introduces little mysteries about the characters and their backstory and how they're connected, because it just drops you into the middle of everything where they're searching for people and they're connected, and you know something's not quite right about, like, why are these two people connected to each other? Like, why is that? And then the next episode will give you another piece of information. You go, okay, I see. And then the next one gives you another piece of information, kind of slowly revealing everything kind of going on, but always building intrigue. But when it does come to the action, it's actually interesting action. Another frustrating thing about Obi-Wan, Book of Boba Fett, even kind of sometimes in Mandalorian, it was so much just kind of generic Star Wars action. Running down Imperial corridors with people firing blasters, but like this exact same action shootout in a Imperial hallways happened so many times over the last 40 years. And so when there's a shootout in this show, without wanting to go into too many specifics, like, it's an interesting environment with like chains and there's moving things going around and there's multiple elements to what's going on in the sequence where different characters have different motivations. And so they're making different choices. And so there's this conflict inside of it besides just the fact that they're shooting at each other. And it's tied to this grander context of this growing tension in the area. So even in a shootout, it has all these layers to it. It's in an interesting environment, and it's done in a way that's memorable and unique. When I talk about the layers and tension, so much of what's going on in this show is that you're looking at the world of Star Wars from all these different groups' perspectives. Of course, you have Andor, but then you have all the other people that live on the planet where he's at, and they have the kind of their own subculture and how they deal with things. And then you have these kind of essentially the police. They're not Imperials, but they're that middle tier that are like Imperial light, and they're trying to police this area while not fully understanding them. And then you have the Imperials, and there's all of those are this intertwining batch of tensions pulling on each other, where each situation has multiple layers to what's going on, why it matters. And so in particular, this third episode has all this tension that's building from all these different things pulling in all these different directions. The use of music and sound and even like clanking is done in a way that builds and releases tension just wonderfully and in a unique way. It's not the sort of thing that we've seen in Star Wars before. And finally, like on all the technical levels, performance levels, it's just great. The actors feel like real people, and then everything looks great. There's actual sets, so it doesn't have that small look that was on Obi-Wan and Book of Boba Fett where they were using that fancy technology and they were trying to tell too big of a story for what worked with that technology. No, they're on real sets, so it looks massive. The effects are all great. And then the score is a totally different type of score for the world of Star Wars. But they actually get you pumped up for everything taking place. So all in all, this is the Star Wars show I've been waiting for. Like, I'm actually excited for a Star Wars thing again, which I wasn't sure was going to happen after Obi-Wan broke my heart so much. There are a couple other things to talk about in here, so let's move on to the mixed aspects. First thing to talk about here, and I mentioned this before, but this is designed for more mature audiences. So like my kids, when they saw the trailer for The Mandalorian, they're like, oh, I can't wait to watch that. They saw the trailer for this one, they had no interest. I've seen the show. They wouldn't like it. And so it's definitely not for as broad of an audience, and it's not playing to like superficial stuff. Not every episode is action-packed. Episode 3 was. Episodes 1 and 2, not really action-packed at all. you have to be invested in the characters and the story, not looking for Easter eggs and the next fight scene and chase scene. It's all about the storytelling, developing of the characters, not all that superficial stuff. And then people always ask, what is the runtime for the episodes? I think the listed runtimes range between 35 minutes and 48 minutes in the first 4 episodes. Now, these Disney shows always have like 8 minutes of credits at the end, so then that plays out to like 27, 28 minutes to 40 minutes range for these first 4 episodes. From there, let's move on to the bad. And I really don't have too much bad to say about this show. The episode divisions are pretty awkward. The first 3 episodes probably should have just been released as a 90-minute TV movie. I think it would play better that way too. That if you just put it out as the pilot movie for the show and you're meant to watch it in one sitting, it tells like a complete story. As is, you might watch the first episode and be like, well, that was kind of an awkward place to end. And then you watch the second episode and you'll be like, that was kind of an awkward place to end. Then you watch the third episode and go, oh, that was really cool. Man, that pulled everything together. But you really need to watch the first 3 episodes together. And I'm sure that's why they released them that way, so that you kind of get the full flavor for the kickoff of this show. And then I guess other negatives in here, maybe the first couple episodes are a little bit too slow. And kind of to that point of maybe things should have been structured a little bit differently. I feel kind of like those first 2 episodes are about 1.5 episodes worth of content maybe. So maybe they're a little bit too slow right at first when you're trying to hook people and get them invested. It's a bit too long before it kicks into motion in that 3rd episode, but it's a minor issue for me in general. Real quick, before I give you my final thoughts, be sure to join me down below in the comment section. Let me know your feelings on Andor and where Star Wars is at in general. And if you like this video, I've done a bunch of other Star Wars content. You can check it out right up here. I did a video just a few months back where I ranked all of the movies and live action TV shows together. I've talked about the final battles, the heroes, the villains, all of that fun stuff. You can find it in this playlist up above. In closing, I thoroughly enjoyed Andor, and as someone that was starting to get a little bit cynical about Star Wars, we have a new hope. It's not gonna be for younger kids. It's a more mature Star Wars series. I highly recommend checking it out. Let me know what you thought down below in the comments section. If you want to check out some more of my Star Wars content, you can check it out in this playlist wherever I put it up here. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies and TV too. Wait, what do I even say at the end? Keep talking movies and TV. I can't even talk anymore. Keep talking movies and TV too much. Bye-bye.